There's a whole psychology on where people sit in a room. Now, y'all are over, 3/4 of you are over here. And so either you are all politically left and they're the right, or if you're looking for my direction, you're politically right and this is the politically left, or these are the introverts in the back and the extroverts in the front, or it just happens this is closest to the parking lot. I don't know which of the two, which of all that is, but Pastor David and I are really grateful to have you with us this morning for Discovery Seminar. We pack our membership, training, teaching into one Saturday. And how many of you have come from a church background where church membership was multiple weeks? It's difficult to do that today because people's schedules, the odds of somebody making every week, they're going to miss something. And so much of church membership is caught by serving in the church, by coming to the Sunday or Saturday night services, of being in a life group, and you really catch what the church is about. So today what we're going to do is we're going to lay down just some basic foundations. I hope that when you leave this afternoon, first of all, that the day went fast, you were well fed, you met a friend, it wasn't too painful. We're going to take a bathroom break at about 10:30. And because I'm sure you didn't get enough to eat, we'll snack at 10:32. And to speed it up, we're going to put the snacks in the bathroom for you, just so we can keep things moving. There'll be a mid-morning break, and then we'll have lunch. And then this afternoon, there's 3 or 4 different things we're going to do, and then you'll be on your way today. How many of you in the room are married? Can I see your hands, please? How many of you are single? Okay, how many of you have been attending New Life for more than 1 year? And less than a year? Okay. How many of you are African American? How many of you are white? How many of you are neither one of those? All right, I'm getting a distribution. How many are from the Kempsville campus? Deep Creek campus? Great. Ghent campus? And Town Center. Anybody from Town Center yet? All right. Nobody from Town Center yet. We opened Sunday, in Town Center, and we had 500 people. The technical, I think the exact number is 491. And that's both services, and that sanctuary only holds 225. So we packed it to the max. It had the overflow section. Going in the second service, in the second service had 23 kids in their discovery, in their children's, what we call a blaze. And it was just really, really happening. How many of you are connected in one way or another to Regent or to CBN? Okay. How many of you are retired? Anybody retired? Great. How many of you are students? Students? Okay. How many of you lived in Tidewater 5 years or more? Less than 5 years. And how many of you are transferring from another church to this church? Okay. How many of you watched the Eagles on Monday night? I'm not an Eagle fan, but I think I'm going to be. They were awesome on Monday night. Good. That gives me just kind of an idea of a distribution. I was born and raised in western South Dakota on a farm. My dad was a Korean War vet, the only boy in his family to go to, he's one of 8. My dad was the only boy in his family to go to college. Or actually, not college, he's the only boy in his family to graduate high school. My grandpa and grandma never did have indoor plumbing, even to the day of their death, or electricity. They lived on a farm. That's where my dad was raised. My dad started to play high school sports, and he had to hitchhike to town and back from town. Don't you know those days are over where you can just go out and hitchhike home? My dad goes to the Korean War. He marries my mother. I'm born in 1956. And my dad, because of the GI Bill, went to further his education, and eventually my dad procured a teaching position at a small college and bought a farm, a little ranch outside that, about 5 miles out of town. That's where I was born and raised and lived, and I actually went to that small college that my dad taught in. Had about 3,000 students. It was there at the college that I met the Lord, and you hear bits and pieces of my testimony in my sermons. And I met my wife while in college, Rhonda. I met my wife, Rhonda. She was younger than I by 3 years, and I married her after 1 year of college. She was 19. I was 22, just turned 22. I graduated college, and we got married. We got married in 5 days after I graduated. And I began to teach school in that community, and the group that I had been with in college where I'd gotten saved, we kind of stayed together after high school, after college, because they were local people, and that formed into a church in about 3 years. I pastored that group. So for 8 years, I was a school teacher, pastoring a group of college students that eventually get married, eventually started having children, and it grew from about 30 people. Probably in the very first 2 or 3 years, maybe 15 people, and eventually grew to 300 people. It was the largest charismatic church, independent charismatic church in South Dakota, and we had 3 pastors on staff. When I was 30 years old, I had gotten a master's degree in mathematics, thinking that I was going to teach in college, because I thought I'd maybe bivocational my whole life. My heart was in ministry, and I would ask God often, I said, Lord, I really would like to preach full time. Lord, if you could see fit to let me go into full-time vocational ministry. And I prayed this all the while working 3 jobs to support a family. My wife stayed at home. We had our kids started coming like this, and eventually she started homeschooling the kids, and I was working pretty hard to support the family. It was a labor of love. We bought a little farm ourselves out in the country, and it was a great place to raise kids. It had the tree forts and all that, and the kids could run, and you have the dog, the whole deal. And so at age 30, after I got this master's degree in math, the church was big enough now for me to teach to be a full-time pastor. So then I went over to be a full-time pastor. And some of you might wonder, when do you go out of vocational ministry out of a job, a normal job, into vocational ministry? You do it when you have so much ministry happening, you can't do both. You don't quit your job and then go into ministry. That doesn't work. You do the ministry while you're in your job, and when the ministry just gets so full, so big, so much happening, there's so much demands that you can't do both. That's when you slide over here. It's amazing how many graduates from Regent University, they go through divinity school, they come and they set up an appointment with me and say, I spent 3 years at divinity school, I'm ready to go into the ministry. And I ask them, well, what have you been doing for 3 years? Tell me your church attendance, what kind of ministry have you been doing? And many times it's nothing. And so they're trying to start ministry from a stop. Well, you don't go into vocational ministry from a stop. And so I was working in the church, and the church was growing. All the while I'm working my job, I got this master's degree in mathematics, and I began to teach at the college that my dad was at. And they were kind of grooming me to take my father's position. Now, I would have had to get a doctorate eventually to get that position, but I was well-liked there, and my dad was well-liked. I was kind of going that way. And then at 31 years of age, there's a Christian school in our community. He said, would you be the principal? And I said, yes, I would. So I quit public school teaching. I quit everything, and I became this principal of this Christian school. All the while I was pastoring the church. I did these 2 for 2 years. And by the time I was 32 years old, the church was big enough to support me full time. Now this would have been about 1988. 1988, right around in there. And I got $26,000 a year. And I never did get a raise, by the way. I was $26,000 a year to be the pastor of this church. And I pastored that church till I got to be 37. At age 37, I had kind of an emotional, spiritual crisis. I'd come to faith in the Jesus movement, had a real measure of idealism about faith and church world, and those ideals were really shattered with real life over time. And I was committed to the Lord, was committed to His work, and so I wasn't going to quit the church, but I was imploding. And one of the things that happened is we had a leadership style in the church where we had a plurality of elders where there was nobody, everybody was equal. So you never could make a decision. It was just this massive, how would I put it? You just had to have consensus on everything. So what happened is if you had gifts of leadership in the group, those gifts of leadership could not rise and lead because they were really hampered by the slow adopters having the final word on everything. And eventually I was being overworked. The other two pastors weren't really pulling their weight. There was no mechanism, no apostolic mechanism by which to make any adjustment. And so I was really imploding. And it got to the point, actually, it was a few times where I went out to my car and I would just lay my head on the steering wheel and I just wept. And my wife would come up and say, "Honey, what's wrong?" I said, "I don't know what's wrong, really." The marriage was fine. The kids were okay. The church from the outside was doing well. But I was imploding. Then I'm sitting at my desk. This would have been November of 1993. I've been 36 years old. And there was an advertisement that came in the junk mail, an advertisement to go to CBN University, now called Regent. And I looked at that and I called my wife on the telephone and said, "Honey, I think we're supposed to go to Regent." And so I met with the elders. The elders gave me a 3-month sabbatical to go for 1 semester. So I came to Regent for 1 semester. Actually, back in those days, there were quarters. And I came in February of 1994. And I stayed for the quarter through the springtime. And this discouragement, this heaviness, this sense of confusion lifted in my life. Like I could breathe again, like I had vision again, I had hope again. Something was being restored to me. But at the end of the 3 months, I went back to our church. This is in Spearfish, South Dakota. I went back, assuming I was going to stay. I stayed for 2 months. And that dark cloud, like in the Peanuts comic strip, who's the guy that's got the cloud of dirt? Pigpen. You know how everywhere Pigpen goes, this cloud goes around, follows Pigpen? That was like me, man. I could get away from it for a little bit, but it just kept coming back to me. And so in July of 1994, I met with the elders and said, "I'm in trouble." And they said, "Dan, why don't you take a whole year off and then come back?" So I did. I sold our home. Rhonda and I sold our home, liquidated all of our assets. We came to Regent in the fall of 94 to stay a whole year. Well, the story ends this way. I never did go back. I didn't stay as a rebel. I mean, I said to the elders, "I will come back if you feel that's the will of the Lord." Because you can't have authority if you're not under authority. If nobody has permission to say no to you, you're not really under authority. I'm submitted until you're asked to do something you don't want to do. That's really the test of submission. So I knew I wasn't really submitted to our church if I was not willing to do something I did not want to do. So I said, "I put it in your hands." They loved me. I loved them. We prayed for several months. And finally they said, "We believe that although we really need you here, we believe that it's best for you, Dan, for you to stay." So I stayed in Virginia. I was asked to be on the staff of Bobby Hill's church, which is called New Life Christian Fellowship. It meets on Volvo Parkway. And I became a campus pastor in New Life Christian Fellowship. And it was a fast-growing church. I was the pastor of the Greenbrier location. And by the blessing of God, it grew to about 1,300 people. And I added staff. And one of the staff members I added to my campus, which is part of a multi-site church, I added Kevin Turpin. How many of you know Pastor Kevin? How many have never heard of Pastor Kevin? Never heard? Okay, let me show you a picture of Kevin. He helped. We met in college. We became friends in college. I asked him to be on the staff. Okay, page 18. Page 18. Kevin's the fourth guy down there on the left. So I met Pastor Kevin. He's from Long Island. We met in a college class at Regent, because I was working on my master's degree there. And I said, Kevin, would you like to come on staff with me at Greenbrier, where I was the campus pastor? We needed more pastors. He said, after prayer, he said yes. So Kevin joins me at the church. All right? So now I'm about 40. Let's see, I'd be about 40. I suppose around 40, 39. And Kevin, we're good friends now, and he joins me. We pastor together. And then in 1999, Kevin Turpin and I had we had coffee one day, and this is how the conversation went. What would it look like if the friendship that you and I have with each other could be built on to build a church that'd be multi-ethnic, where it wouldn't be one ethnicity saying to another, come and join us, but leave your distinctives at the door. We're open to you coming, but you're going to have to do church the way we do church. What would it look like if we started a church where all cultures came together and were equally represented, and the philosophy of ministry reflected all the cultures? There's Christians, of course, reflected that, and we were intentionally multi-ethnic. So in other words, the music, the leadership, the style, the interest, the mission was deliberately multi-ethnic. And Kevin and I, as we talked about this, something caught in us, and we began to dream together. Now, I'm from South Dakota, and so what I'm describing to you would be as foreign to you. I don't even know if I could give it a parallel. I just didn't have it in my mind, in my DNA, of what a multi-ethnic church would be, how to do this. I had never lived in a cross-cultural situation before. In South Dakota, everybody's either German or Norwegian. It's just the way it is. And you're raised around Germans and Norwegians and Lutherans and Catholics. I mean, that's it. That's just the way it is. And so for me to do a multi-ethnic church, I go, goodness gracious, how would we ever do this? So I spent a year visiting African-American pastors, Asian pastors, Hispanic pastors, saying, what speak to me. What are some of the things that would make this work? What would be some of the things that would not make this work? I'll give you an example of something that gets enculturated. How many of you are aware of the Wordless book, where on the mission field, you know the Wordless book? So the first picture is black, and the second is red. The third thing is white, and the fourth thing is gold. Anybody familiar with those four colors in the gospel story? Well, I was showed how that the way that's presented can be offensive, because it's presented this way: when your heart is black with sin, and Jesus comes in, he makes it white because of the blood. I think the blood's the second one. Because of the blood, which is red. So the second one's red. Your black heart becomes white. And then we have the future of going to heaven, which is the streets of gold. So black was bad, the white was good, and this is the Wordless book. And so this has been taught on the mission field all around the world for people that don't understand English. You show the book, and the people and the translator translate that. Y'all with me already, I can tell. And so the pastor said to me, he said, Dan, there's a very simple thing that the white evangelical church uses over and over and over that has never really been processed on how you present sin. Because there's the scripture that says, even though my sin be as scarlet, so you can represent sin as red. You can represent this in different kinds of biblical metaphors without, now obviously it would be different from culture to culture. There's just one small thing I had to learn. You have to learn inclusive language. You have to learn what your core values are and allow different people to contextualize core values. One of the things you'll find here in New Life is we'll sing a gospel song. I'm going to ask you if you become a member of this church, if we sing a gospel song and your background is not, by the way, gospel is not 4-part Southern gospel. I'm talking about black gospel. When you sing a black gospel song, if you're white today, maybe maybe you're unfamiliar with that form of worship, or maybe you don't even like it. I'm going to ask you to jump in the waters. Maybe you have all you listen to in your car is gospel music, and you're going to be in this church, and this church sings a Hillsong or sings something by Bethel. That's definitely not, it's not contemporary Christian, but it's also not black gospel. It's kind of a different genre of music. I'm going to ask you to jump in. And then we're going to close out with a hymn that's kind of genre-less because it's a hymn. And so in a multi-ethnic church, you have an appetite to experience, participate in, and value other people's expressions and preferences in worship. You follow me in this? You might come from a background where everybody who prays just prays conversationally. God, we thank you today for this service. Now, if you come from a church where the prayer is always energetic, you're going to judge that prayer as not, come on, let's get with it. Get with it, man. You're just boring. I'm falling asleep just listening to you pray. Well, and then somebody gets up there and they're very animated. And they're very energetic. And they're calling on God. And so you're thinking, man, they're a bit loud. God's not deaf. And so there's a tendency to judge even another's spirituality based on your own preference. You follow me? Right. And what we do is we make preferences. We make preferences into something they're never meant to be. They're not convictions. Church makes preferences into convictions. God never asked you to violate your convictions. But preferences in a multi-ethnic church, they are always I'm going to offend somebody. I'm just going to offend you. If I don't offend you today, I'm going to offend you because you have a cultural grid. And I'm going to say something, and it could be political, it could be historical, it could be a joke, it could be, and in a multi-ethnic church we say we'll give everybody a get-out-of-jail-free card. Everybody gets a get-out-of-jail-free card because we're intentionally a church that honors different perspectives and gives patience and understanding in grace for somebody who may not see things the way we see things. Hey, we just got through the last 4 presidential elections and the church didn't split. Now that's a miracle. That is a plumb miracle. And I know the people in our church pretty well, and I know that I follow you guys on Facebook. I know how political our world has become. In America today, it's not a Christian nation anymore, really. It's a political nation. Politics are most people's religion. They will die over their political view. Church, okay. But when it comes to politics, and so in our church, Kevin and I said, let's create a church that's not hijacked by politics, not hijacked by any cultural norm that we would say is superior than others. Let's try to have a genuine multi-ethnic church. So in 1999, we were sent out to start that church. And we went to Indian River High School. And here we are today. Almost 20 years later, we have somewhere between 5,000 and 6,000 members in our church. Used to be, if you remember, you went to church every week. In the modern church, fully committed members, some of them only come twice a month. So it's really hard to get a gauge. You almost have to look at official membership rolls or offerings or something to figure out how many people are actually there, because if everybody, comes on one Sunday, you have a much larger number than you think. And this vision is just grown by the grace of God. We're going to talk about the details of this vision this afternoon. So, we started this church in 1999. Over a process of years, we have bought this facility, bought the Deep Creek facility, bought the Ghent facility. Now we purchased the Town Center facility, and we're writing history even today. Can I hear an amen to that? So that's my story. This is my story. This is my song. Praising my Savior all the day long. Amen. I want to look with you today, I want you to be clear on a couple of things in New Life. One is I want you to be clear on the mission of our church, okay? I'll just tell you the mission. It's in here. I don't know what page it's on. There we go. It's on page 9. By the way, I want to draw your attention to page 8. Can you see page 8 in our booklet? Page 8. The first graph is average weekly attendance. You see, after there's a high point in 14 or 16, then it dropped off in 17. I wish they hadn't put this in here, because what happened is we stopped counting the youth group. We counted the youth group numbers in, and then we take them out, and then we don't put in this group. Then we put it, and so a lot depends on how you count. Today, New Life would be at its peak in terms of adults on Sunday morning. This would reflect how we're counting in the children. So I'm not even exactly sure how that's supposed to look. The gross income, however, is far, far more clear. Okay? The mission statement of church. The mission statement is, why do you exist? So New Life exists. This church exists for the glory of God. If you believe that is a good goal, say amen. Would you do that? All right. New Life exists for the glory of God, not the glory of man or the glory of a nation or the glory of a denomination or the glory of a senior pastor and his family or her family. It exists for the glory of God. How does this glory of God, how does this come about? Well, by our primary mission is therefore to make disciples of all people. To make disciples of all people. What kind of disciples of all people? And we say this here, through the gospel of Jesus Christ. So we're not making them disciples of another religion, of another value system, of another person. It's of Jesus Christ. So this is the mission of our church. This is why we exist. Take this away, New Life doesn't exist. We do not exist primarily as a relief and development organization. We don't exist primarily just to meet the needs of the poor. We don't exist primarily to provide training for your children. We don't exist primarily for some kind of a social activism or personal development or to give peace or to create a safe place. These things are all important, but they fall under our primary reason of existing is to give God glory. We exist that God will be pleased with us. And whatever that takes, we're committed to doing it. Now, we believe the Word of God says a primary way for that to happen is to make disciples of men and women to be fully devoted followers of Christ. That's why we exist, to get people from darkness into light, to help people that are saved to grow in their faith. And that happens through the gospel of the Lord Jesus. We have a little motto here. New Life, our motto is, we want everybody in Hampton Roads to hear the gospel. Here's the kicker. From the lips of somebody from New Life Church. So we've got 2 million people, or whatever the number is, in the Hampton Roads cities, all 7 cities. Our goal is at some point in the future, everybody is going to have heard the gospel from the lips of somebody from New Life. Now, hopefully they hear the gospel many other ways besides that. But that'll be our motto. We're going to to make this a driving force. Now, so there's the vision. What's the vision again? To give God glory by making disciples through the gospel. There is the mission. Now, the vision of the church, the vision of the church gets changed. And it doesn't have to stay the same. Over time, as the church changes, the vision can change a little bit. Right now, the vision of New Life, and I hope you... Can you all see that? Can you see that? Yeah? Well, can you see that? No. Good, thank God. This is the vision of New Life. Okay, so the mission of New Life, we already talked about that. This is the big picture. Now, how does that play out in our church? So what's the vision of New Life? The vision of New Life there's 3 M's. I want to put these 3 M's in here. The first thing is for the church to be missional. This is the vision of New Life. What does missional mean? This is basically a basic definition. The word missional means that all of us live as missionaries. That's basically it. In your job, in your family, on the vacation, you live as a missionary. You're bringing the gospel, the kingdom of God, into a situation in your neighborhood where you vacation. You live as a missionary. How many think that's a worthwhile vision? That's to get the church focusing outward. I just fall apart when I go by a church that is shrinking in size, and on their marquee they have chili dinner Thursday nights. I'm going, goodness sakes. The church has been reduced to chili dinners. Halloween Fall Festival. Good. I'm glad you have a Halloween Fall Festival. Praise the Lord for that. Is the gospel in there? Are you making disciples? Are people coming to faith? Somehow, in some churches, they have become a social center and they lost the vibrancy of the reason of their existence, and that's to give God glory through the gospel. And so we're going to attempt at New Life to be as missional as we can. Out the doors. You come on a Sunday, come to your life groups, get fed, get prayed for, get healed, and out the door. How many used to watch the television show MASH? You remember that old show, MASH? Mobile Army Surgical Hospital. So it was a hospital right near the front lines. Soldiers would get wounded. They'd go to a MASH hospital, get fixed up, and go back out to the war. That's what a church is like. You've been beat up a little bit this week? Come on in. Hear the word of grace. Come into the presence of the Lord through the singing. Receive the love of your brothers and sisters. And they'll go back out the door. Get back out there in your job. Get back out there in that school. Get back out there in your neighborhood. Get involved. Don't just sit home behind your picket fence. Get involved. Meet people. Do what you're supposed to do as a missionary, right? Maybe you've been wounded in church. I want to make a comment to anybody here this morning that has come out of a toxic church situation. I'm going to give you today a year's pass. You can be a member, and for 1 year you just come and vegetate, right? You come and soak in the presence of God. You come and hear the Word of God. Come to church. I'm not encouraging you not to come to church, but you don't have to serve. At the end of a year, it's time for you to begin to serve again. It's not healthy. It's not healthy to be in a church and not serve, because it creates an abnormal sense of faith. You with me on that? And when you're in a mega church where there's a staff, there's a tendency to be anonymous and that they don't need me. Where that is really not true. We need probably 2,000 volunteers. People that say, I'm a part of this, I'm going to contribute, I'm going to help by sharing my gifts. Sometimes it's just a sheer act of service. This is part of giving back. And so you can have a season to get your wounds healed. Take it. Be blessed. At the end of that season, find your place in the wall. In New Life, if you become a member of New Life, you're committing to 3 things. To be a member, you're committing to service, to do one thing. Now, this is a general rule. Let's say you get ill. Well, obviously, you got to pull back. Or your family has a unique set of circumstances. There's grace. I mean, I'm not checking you out the door, but the basic member of New Life, they serve. They could be part of a prayer team, part of a life group, part of Sunday school, usher, greeter, be part of the missions ministry. They're part of the food pantry. They're part of the Life Enrichment Center, tutoring children. They're part of a Sunday worship team, a choir. They're part of the volunteer team that helps set up special services. They're part of an intercession team. They're part of the altar prayer team. They're part of soaking prayer, morning prayer. There's 100 places to serve. Find one that fits your gifting and your schedule and serve. Second thing to be a member of New Life is to ask everybody to be in a small group. To be in a small group. Why? Why be in a small group? So that there's a group of people that get to know you, you get to know them, and you begin to share real life with them. Christian community is formed. This would be really unfortunate. You join the church next Sunday or in 2 weeks, whatever it is, 3 weeks, I don't remember. You join the church, you come here for a year, and then you leave. And nobody even misses you. That would be no good. You weren't really a member of the church, you were an attender. A member of the church is a member. It's like a body part. It's a member of the body. You got... if you're the knee, you got the lower leg connected to you, the upper leg connected to you, muscles connected to you, and there's people around you connected to you. So small groups allow you to get connected. Now we have a lot of liberty with the small groups. I think we have 85 life groups, but other things can serve as a small group. The choir is a small group. I think the men's the parking team is a small group. Any small group of people that pray together. That will pray together. You just can't do stuff together. You got to pray together. And there's a sense of member care one to another. That's what we need. That's what we're looking for. How many of you have been in a mega church prior to this one? All right. How many of you have most of your time been in a church of less than 100 people? Okay. When you have a church of less than 100 people, you've got great community. Generally speaking. But the programs of the church are sometimes lack a level of excellence because you just don't have the resources to do it for the kids, for the children, for missions. When you have a mega church, you can amp the programs a bit, but then people can come and they can kind of hide. We want the best of both worlds. We want to have excellence in programs as well as everybody having a connection. So if you're part of New Life, it's what was the first thing I said? Yeah, it's a place of meaningful use of your gifts. Second thing is a small group of community. And the third thing is for you to share the ministry of this church financially. We ask members to tithe. It's a sign of discipleship. And tithing is 10% of unrestricted income in your home. You can define it as 10% of restricted income. That's between you and God. That's not the point. The point is disciples of Jesus. That's our mission, is to make disciples of Jesus. Let me ask you this. Are you required to go to church to be saved? That's not a trick question. No. Jesus is who saves you. You don't have to go to church to be saved. But if you have a relationship with Jesus that's vibrant, do you go to church? You should. Would you agree? Will you agree with this supposition then? If you're a follower of Christ, it's normative as a disciple to go to church. Is that fair? That's fair, right? If you're a disciple of Jesus, is it normative to pray? Yeah. Do you have to pray? No, you don't have to pray. You don't ever have to pray. But you say, man, you're a Christian and you never pray? That's possible, but that's not normative. So when somebody says, I'm a Christian, I would say to them, you don't have to go to church to be saved, but you really should. I would say you don't have to pray, but you should. Same thing with tithing. Do you have to tithe? No, you don't have to tithe. We're not under the law. God doesn't curse you if you don't tithe. The old covenant is no longer in force. We're under grace today. But a disciple should tithe because that's just normal for a disciple to do. That's how the gospel is advanced. That's how you disciple your spending. That's how you support a church, is through tithing. So it's not, the question isn't, do I have to? The question is more, should I? And a normal disciple does give to the local church. Now somebody might say, well, Pastor Dan, my tithe is split up between CBN and Operation Blessing and Angel Tree, and my son is a missionary in Botswana, so I give him some money, and I give money at work to the orphan fund. I go, great. You got a heart of giving. Can you squeeze us in there a little bit? It doesn't have to be. Understand, it's not about the 10% in a case like that. It's about being a member of a church is supporting the church financially. So we got the three: your giftings, your gifts, and the small group to be a part of the church. Okay, that's being missional. Anybody have any questions on that before I move on? Okay. If you have any questions at break, just come up and we'll get them all in. The second part of the vision of the church, can you all say missional? Missional. The second one is multi-ethnic. I've already kind of unpacked a little bit of that. This afternoon, Pastor Joel and Pastor Manuela are going to talk about that in far more detail. But the vision of the church for New Life, our vision is to be a missional. Everybody's a missionary. Second thing is, what was it? It's a multi-ethnic church. And the last thing is it's multi-site. It's a multi-site church. And that's a strategy of our church to be multi-site. Okay? Now, I want to talk to you for a minute about what does it mean to be a multi-site church. Oh, David, was this a permanent marker? Yep. All right. Let's see. I wonder if I can squeeze it. Maybe I can squeeze it over here. A multi-site church. A multi-site church is a kind of a strategy. It's not a doctrine. So you could have a variety of different kinds of multi-site churches. What a multi-site church is essentially is one church has multiple locations. Okay? How many McDonald's are there in Hampton Roads? Too many. You ever notice at McDonald's you can never hear the person talking on the speaker? They have 100,000 in these stores and it still sounds like, help you, sir? Pardon me? Sir. I'll take a fish sandwich, fries, and a chocolate shake. Before 64 at the window, please. What did you say? I don't know what you said to me. And you go to Chick-fil-A, I hear every word of Chick-fil-A. And you go to Chick-fil-A, they got like 15 cars waiting in line. Go up to the mall. Look at how many people are at Chick-fil-A. Everybody else has got people out in front of their store saying, come in, come in, come in. Chick-fil-A is like packed. I'm hungry, can you tell? I need Chick-fil-A. So McDonald's has multiple sites. It's one corporation. Right? Chick-fil-A, multiple sites, one corporation. At the site that you go to, there's a manager. Who hires and fires the staff at that location of that fast food? The manager does. Who's responsible for the service at that place? The manager. Who's responsible for customer service? The manager is. Who's responsible for the product? Who's responsible for quality control? Who's responsible to build the buildings? Who's responsible for the training of the managers? Who's responsible for the financial backing to do national advertising? That's the central, right? So there's a really distinct... A McDonald's is not autonomous, but to the casual customer, it seems autonomous. That's a lot like it is in a multi-site church. We have a campus pastor who cares for his congregation, but the central team provides the resources, the expertise, the finances, the mission, and in our case, it provides the sermon. So what we have today is we've got Kempsville as a campus, we've got Deep Creek as a campus, we've got Ghent as a campus, and now we've got Town Center as a campus, right? At Deep Creek, Pastor Tina is the campus pastor. She's on sabbatical, so now it's Roger until she returns. At Kempsville, it's Jeremy, Pastor Jeremy. At Ghent, it's Pastor David, who's going to be talking to you in just a little bit. And at Town Center, it's Pastor Joel. Each of these four pastors have other staff that have been assigned to them. And then the central staff, I'll just say this is the central staff, it resources these. It resources them. And the central team, the central team really helps with the money, the HR, the word, which is the preaching, and the systems. Okay? So the Sunday school department, for example, at Town Center has a children's coordinator, but there's a central children's director that gives support. Doesn't do it, just gives support. Each of these four areas have a youth ministry with a youth pastor. In the central staff, Liam Coventry, who's the executive pastor, he oversees and he coordinates the youth ministries. Children's the same way, missions is the same way. So you get the best of both worlds. You get the intimacy, the fellowship, the feet on the ground of a small campus, but you also get the bang for your buck of a mega church. So it's kind of the best of both worlds. Now, some of you might say, well, let's talk about the Word. I preach the Word. It's delivered either by video or I do it live. And if I'm not here, we'll either have a guest speaker or the campus pastors will preach, okay? Sometimes I'm asked, why don't the campus pastors preach? Well, if the campus pastors preach and oversee their campus, then we have slipped so far on the continuum there really needs to be an independent church. Because a church, there's one word to the church, not multiple words. There is what God is saying to the church, and that comes through the senior leader of the church. Now, am I opposed to campus pastors preaching? Of course not. They all preach Jeremy here, he preaches nearly every week at City Life. They're always preaching all the time, these guys and ladies. So it's not as if they don't preach. It's a multi-site, though, church, to be together. If we're really going to be one church, there has to be a singular vision, a singular senior leadership team, and a singular word that's preached. Okay? Now, this is the strategy for now. The Lord can change this strategy anytime He wants. I do know this. These campuses would not have existed if it wasn't for a multi-site church. There's no way Town Center could have afforded that. That cost $1.25 million and $350,000 to remodel. That priced it immediately out of a startup church. Immediately. No denomination is going to back that. But a multi-site church can do a capital campaign for the whole church and have enough to get this off the ground. It's the same for here, and here. The pastors that are in each of these places now would have had to have been bivocational for a number of years before that their churches would have taken off. on day one, they're able to be full-time pastors. So these campus pastors, they focus on the quality of their campus. That's counseling, that's life groups, that's family ministry, that's Sunday services. They love their church. They're the face to the place. They're the first line of pastoral care. But they don't bring the word every Sunday. That comes via either me live or a video. Okay? The goal of New Life is to have other campuses, and some of you in this room will probably be part of that. Probably sent out from here to, I'm waiting for one to open up in Miami. Hawaii. I think I'd like to go to Honolulu. Needs a campus. So there'll be other campuses. There'll be other campuses. And we're not going to stop, and hopefully we could stop if the Lord said stop, but there'll be other campuses until everybody in Hampton Roads has a campus 15 to 30 minutes from their home. Mega church used to go this way. Dynamic church, people would drive an hour to a mega church because it's so dynamic. But on Tuesday, you're not driving an hour to the men's meeting. On Saturday, you're not going an hour to help with the food pantry. I mean, good Lord, that's an hour back. So basically, you become a Sunday attender at a mega church if you live more than 15, 20 minutes away. This model is that we're going to bring the church to you. You don't have to drive. Kempsville got up to 2,000 people, and once we broke 2,000, we thought about building a sanctuary. Knock those walls out, build a big sanctuary. That's when we decided to go multi-site, thinking the ministry can be better delivered to the people if we don't make everybody drive in. Now, that vision is good for some people. I don't criticize it all. Wave Church, they're doing a fantastic job. Calvary Revival is doing a fantastic job. No argument. I'm not saying their vision is inferior to this. Our vision is just a bit different, and that is we want to take the church to you, decentralize as much of the ministry as we can. When you have a multi-site church like this, a lot more leaders. If you have a mega church, how many lead singers is there on a Sunday if you have one site? One. If you have campuses, how many are on a Sunday? 4, 5. There's opportunity for a lot more people to share their gifts in a multi-site strategy. Now, somebody might argue, why don't you just plant churches? Why don't you just plant them? Why make campuses? Why don't you just plant them? And I go back to my original argument is that they don't have the resources to start. Here, you start this, people from here, here, and here help until it gets going. The money is there, the resources are there, the expertise is there. In Hampton Roads, there's 100 new churches. Every school has got one, every storefront's got one, every YMCA has got one. They're everywhere. And most of them don't make it because they're under-resourced. Multi-site's a different animal. You can bring to bear expertise and resource, human resource and financial resource. They give you a far better opportunity to have something catch and make it. Now, you might say, what happens if one of these guys or somebody on the team wants to start their own church? Can they do that in New Life? Of course they can. Of course they can. We'd have to talk about where. We can't have a campus here and you want to start a church like right there. I mean, that's not good for the kingdom. That's just weird. But of course they can. So there is the vision, being missional, multi-ethnic, and multi-site. This is every person's a missionary. Every campus strives to be multi-ethnic. And the strategy is to be a multi-site church. Now, the final thing I'll say, and then we can do some questions if you have any, is that at the center here, at the central staff right here, this is the hub of the campuses, we're starting, let me just put it like this, we're starting I'll take that out, Dream Center. Okay, and that's at the center. And the Dream Center is a resource center for basic needs like food, clothing, shelter, education, employment. That. Right? Dream Centers, it's a national movement. There are Dream Centers in all the major cities, and most of the time they're affiliated with the church. But a Dream Center is where the homeless can get housing and where somebody needs medical care can get something. Just the basic human needs, right? Our church has a very dynamic ministry to the homeless that happens at Ghent with Pastor David and his team. This would be a part of that, but only one part. The Dream Center is going to be a nuts to bolts, A to Z, comprehensive care for the poor, the underserved, the underprivileged. And this is the idea. Good works will create an open heart for the good news. This is the good works of the church in our community. The good works will open hearts so that these campuses can bring the good news. Every one of these campuses will have a Dream Center representative. So let's say person A just got let go from the military or discharged, doesn't have a job, might be an addict, and he doesn't know what to do. All I say to him is, get to a campus, get in the door. We're going to connect you to the Dream Center. We can't promise that you're going to get everything you need, but we're going to promise you that we're going to make the connections that you need. So the Dream Center will be a clearinghouse. For example, we can't just staff all the doctors, all the dentists, all the optometrists, all the counselors, all the addiction specialists, but we will do some of that, and then we have referrals. So we will connect, well, you need XYZ. Hey, let me get you in a car. I'll take you over here. This nonprofit has what you need. So in many ways, it'll work with other nonprofits to connect city government and all that the city government offers with local churches, other nonprofits, and New Life Resources. It'll be super dynamic, in my view, and I think it can really have a change in the city's perception of the church. Somebody might be thinking, well, what if another church is already doing some of that? Well, great. We're not going to duplicate what you're doing, but I'm going to ask you, can I send somebody over to participate in what you're doing? Because it's going to be a referral center as well. I just saw something in the news the other day. Did you know that 80%, we've had these three hurricanes, that 80% of the assistance people are getting is not coming from FEMA or state government? 80% is coming through nonprofits. 8 out of $10 is coming through nonprofits. Little churches. You know, the Salvation Army, they're the hero in this thing. How much press do they get? Like none. Yes, ma'am. Wow. That's awesome. We have the children's coordinator at Deep Creek? Britt? She's Puerto Rican. She's coordinating. Do you know her? Sorry, I'm telling the story. No, stand up here and tell us what she's doing. Tell us what your daughter's doing for Puerto Rico.
Oh my God.
You can hold it.
Well, my daughter Brit, she is getting in touch with many people here in Chesapeake, Virginia Beach. We have a big restaurant in Virginia Beach, and that man, he is sending to Puerto Rico big containers of food, water, etc. Breed is getting in touch, with him. And like, for example, my grandson, who's in the Boy Scouts, they are getting batteries because they need batteries D. There's no power, there's no water, hardly food. So she is getting in touch with different campus, different campus. There's one of the pastors, I don't remember his name. He had a group, and he wants to go with that group to Puerto Rico because there are a lot of people in the mountains that they cannot get to them because there's no bridge, no roads, everything is broken. So they need people that can walk and take things to those people so far away. So this man, he has a group, and they are ready to go. But my daughter, she is in charge of all those things, and she said, you have to wait, because right now it's such a mess that we have to at least get everything a little bit settled. So I'll tell you, now it's time to go, because then you can go to those places, because there are no roads, no bridge. So the situation is very, very hard. Like, for example, I call my sister, my family is over there. My only family here is Brit, my only daughter. And for example, I call my sister. Once in a while, I can get to her because of the power. And they have to go to the cars to get the iPhones, whatever, so they can call me or I can call her. And I said, how are things? She said, please don't ask me about Puerto Rico, because you would never believe it. It's like when we were kids, long time ago, we need so many things. And when you go out, she said, crying, you won't believe. There's nothing, no trees, nothing is, it's like ashes. It's something so, so hard to believe that you wouldn't. So I can't go there, because right now I'm not going to do anything like Brit. So we are trying to help from here.
Thank you, Eunice. Yeah, it's heartbreaking. So the Dream Center will be about resources, coordinating resources. It's going to be primarily local, probably exclusively within the Tidewater area. We have a missions department here at New Life that supports, if you count children, about 45 missionaries on the field. Individual units, we have about 18 individual missionary units that we have a whole missionary program, missions program that gives them finances and resources and teams. You see, this is part of being a multi-ethnic church. Historically, white suburban churches, their first impulse was to take the gospel to people who's never heard. Their first impulse when you think mission is across the ocean. In the African American church, traditionally, when you think mission, it was helping your neighbor. And then go overseas. The idea was, why help over there if you're not helping here? Well, in a multi-ethnic church, We don't make one more important than the other. We say we're going to do both. We're going to do as much as possible locally, and plus as much as possible internationally. And what's happening is there's a synergism. You know, when we first used to have short-term missions trips, and we send out about 20 missions trips a year to all around the world, and each of them last about 10 days. And people from our church go. And they can be construction, evangelism, they can be prayer walking, they can be 100 different kinds of things. When we first started to do this, it went like this. All the local ministry, African Americans were super involved. And the foreign missionary, the mission trips, they were all Caucasians. That was 15 years ago. Today, that is completely different. Absolutely, completely different. We have sent out some teams in the last 2 years that have almost been all African American, right, David? And we're saying, hey, we got to, come on now. We got to, this isn't what we want. We got to bring, and then we'll have local outreach, like with the Life Enrichment Center and Kids Hope and these things that have large non-African American participation. And it'll happen because in a multi-ethnic church, both are respected, both are given voice, both are prayed about, both are honored, and both are financed. And I'm really proud of the church in that area that, we're sending a team to Houston, we're sending a team to Jacksonville, we're sending a team to Puerto Rico. At the same time, we're raising up 250 tutors to work with the Life Enrichment Center this fall. I think we may get up to 300 that are going to tutor at-risk children up to the 3rd grade, help them learn to read in Title I schools. We're in 20 Title I schools. That's part of the mission of the church. So the Dream Center, I know that's very close. David's right here. That's very close to David's heart. So I'm going to bring this part to a close, and then we'll do some questions. So this is the structure of the church. Multi-site, but one church. One eldership, one vision, one senior pastor, and a dream center at the center that helps resource, train, and reach all the communities represented by the campuses. Okay? You know what, I think I'm going to throw one more thing at you. Then we're going to, so I can get structure real quick. Here's me. How's New Life structured in the central staff? New Life has this. We have a staff. And the staff's about 50 paid, about 25 full-time. No, about 30 full-time. Maybe a few more, maybe 35 full-time. Let's see. About 30 full-time, 20 part-time. That's the staff of the church. And I'm the senior pastor. I oversee the staff. And then there's an elder team. And this eldership, this is the fiduciary agents of the church. They oversee the church. And these men and women, there's about 12 of them. They serve 3-year terms. They're appointed once a year. They serve 3-year terms. This eldership has the power to dismiss me if, because of biblical grounds, I am no longer capable or qualified to lead the church. They can speak into the whole church. So this is how New Life, we have a flow chart in the book I gave you. That's how that looks. Now, this is New Life. Okay? Now, New Life is part of a bigger organization called One Focus. One Focus is a network of churches. I'll make this a dotted line. It's not a denomination, but there are about 30 churches in this network. It's an apostolic network. These men and women, these churches over here, they would help our church anytime. Let's say that I fell in immorality. That would be such a painful, horrific thing that this network would come in and help our church navigate those waters. If I was handing the baton off to the next pastor, the network leadership team would come in and help with that ordination. If this church ran into a financial problem and we're going to go lose the church to the bank, this group would come in and try to help us square away with our finances. So there's some accountability here. They don't have the power to dictate, but they really have the power to advise. Okay? Now, that's how we're structured, multi-site, internally, externally. You heard the vision, you heard the mission, the strategy of multi-site, Dream Center, the rationale behind it. Any questions about anything I said so far? Anybody have a question? Run this around, would you?
Maybe this is in the booklet, but I was just wondering, who makes up the One Focus Network? Is it a rep from each church? Or?
Good question. The One Focus Network has 3 leaders. That's called an executive team, executive leadership team. And they don't have to be men, but there's 5. And these are guys that have giftings, a leadership gifting to oversee. They've either planted churches or they've overseen churches before. And of these 5, I'm one of these guys. There's me. And actually, I'm the senior director of this group. And with me is Kevin Turpin. Y'all remember Kevin? The guy that helped start this? Kevin Turpin. Dr. Joseph Umidi. He's a vice president at Regent University. Then there is Grubby. He leads a mega church up in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. And then there's Merle. And he pastors a church in Harrisonburg. And these guys, with me, we oversee these 30 churches. And it's a lot of relationships and community, pastoral care, marriage reinforcement. And when a church has a pivotal moment, then we're called in and we help them. Yeah, good question. Another question, anybody, on structure or vision or history? Oh, I know there's got to be another question out there. Okay.
Forgive me if I missed it, but what is the location of the Dream Center going to be?
Of the which one?
The Dream Center, where's that anticipated to be at?
The Dream Center, this is what, if we have a successful campaign, which we're right in the middle of the Love Hampton Roads campaign, it will give us the startup dollars for the Dream Center. First thing we're going to do with the Dream Center is hire a director. Personnel first. We need somebody that can develop the concept, connect with city government, connect with other churches, connect with the national organization of the Dream Center organizations. And then out of that, then we'll rent a facility. So right now, we're going to office it out of one of our campuses when we hire the director. As soon as we can afford it, we'll move the Dream Center into its own facility. It'll be a rented facility. I'd like to have the Dream Center not housed in one of our campuses, because if it's not in there, then it'll act like it's just not theirs. It's everybody's. You follow me in that? And I think other nonprofits are more likely to connect if they don't have to go to a church. Because the Dream Center is gospel-centered, Christ-centered, absolutely to the max. But we would be willing, for example, to partner with, who's the big organization that collects all the money every year? Like we work with United Way. They're not Christian, but if the United Way provides, let's say, job training or something, we would send people to get trained over there. So we'll support the United Way. And so if the United Way and organizations like that can connect with the Dream Center, it'd be good to have our own office space. So the order is the staff first, at least the director, maybe a secretary, then a rented facility, then the third step would be a permanent facility that would have residential housing. Because homeless often need transitional housing. This is not a union mission. It's transitional housing. It's different. It's different. And by the way, how many of you are familiar with YWAM? Did you know that YWAM is sending their urban, you don't know this, they're sending their urban DTS here next summer. And we're in discussions with YWAM to have a permanent base right here in Norfolk, Virginia, associated with our church. It'll be an urban YWAM. So there'll be YWAMers dedicated to urban renewal, urban ministry. It's a huge thing. And we'll see what happens with it. Other questions?
I have a question. For the eldership team, are those members of the church? And did you say that they rotate every 3 years?
Yep, good question. These are members of our church in good standing. We have a whole protocol by which they're appointed. These are men and women. And they serve for 3 years. We're going to have 3 new ones coming on board this April. The current eldership team that we have, they're in the booklet. The current team on page 17. These elders have to satisfy the biblical qualification for elders. They have to be members. They have to be faithful in their tithes and offerings. They need to be faithful to prayer. They're the kind of men and women, if you were in a pinch, you'd want to talk to. They have good families. And on the right there's me. I think I look pretty good in that picture. That's before I got my eyes, I got my eyes fixed. I had cataract surgery. And I use these for readers. Do you think I look younger without my glasses? Huh? You like me without my glasses? There you go. Below me is my son, Corney Becker. He's a professor at Regis University. He's the head of the School of Divinity, the seminary. Diane Chandler, she teaches divinity at the Regent as well. Tim Fobbs, he's a professor, or I don't know if he's a professor, he's a teacher at TCC, was a pastor for a number of years. Simeon Fuller has been with the church for a long time, a great man of God, a great man of prayer. Flip the page, Josh Jewett, our youngest and newest elder. We're trying to push the age down a little bit. Josh is an attorney. Melvin McLeese, he's out at Deep Creek. He's really our leader of our prayer movement. Doug Ross is a physician's assistant. He used to be a pastor. Well, he's still a pastor. He used to pastor. Kevin Turpin, I talked about Kevin. Paul Vermack, he's a pharmacist from South Africa. He was on staff at the largest church in South Africa for a number of years as a counselor. And Mark Yarhouse is the leading expert on the evangelical view of human sexuality in America. He's a professor. Dynamic group. Now, we have a woman elder. She's not on here. Well, there's Diane, but we have another one. She just came on board. Marrakeen? What's her first name? Judy Marrakeen just came on board. Yeah, so that's the eldership. Every 3 years, you serve a 3-year term. So we add some every year and take some off every year. Yeah, good question. There was one over here. Yes, ma'am.
I just want to know, because I saw there's another churches that I saw in Demneck and one in Norfolk where my friend is attending. And the same name, New Life Church.
Yeah.
There's no connection with that to our church here now, right?
No.
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 It's only the same name.
Yeah,
They get on the
good
same.
question. I'm not sure which one in Norfolk you're speaking of.
One of my friends, I don't know what part.
Is it on Colonial
I
Avenue?
attended one time in their church, and so with my husband. But I forgot what's the area over here in Norfolk.
Okay.
But not Ghent.
Not Ghent.
Not Ghent.
Well, it was not Ghent.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are lots and lots of churches called New Life. We had to decide years ago if we wanted to change our name, because see, we were planted out of New Life Christian Fellowship. So we dropped the Christian Fellowship, just called ourselves New Life a number of years ago. And I know there are other New Lives. I get that. But we've kind of been branded in the community as New Life. And so it didn't make sense to rebrand, since we have a lot of goodwill with the New Life name. But there's a New Life Mennonite church. There's a New Life church in Hampton that planted a church in Suffolk that's called New Life Suffolk. Now, if you don't think that's confusing, to have a New Life Suffolk, we have a New Life Deep Creek, a New Life Ghent, a New Life Virginia Beach, a New Life Town Center, but New Life Suffolk isn't us. That's a whole different group than we are, so I know there's a little bit of confusion, so we'll just see how it goes. One more question, and we'll take a little bit of a break.
We wanted to know who appoints the elders.
Mm-hmm. Good question. The way an elder is appointed, and I'll close with a little teaching on eldership. It's a great question. It's an important question. Churches can be run or governed by three different kinds of governance. One of the types of governments is totally democratic, where everybody votes. That's called a congregational form of government. A lot of Baptist churches are congregational. Assemblies of God is congregational. You vote. Once a year, you might vote if you want to keep your pastor. The whole congregation votes if you're going to buy the building. The congregation votes on the budget. The congregation votes on everything. That is called a congregational form of government. It's totally democratic. The second form of government is an Episcopalian or Episcopos form of government. Episcopals are be an example. Anglicans and Catholics. They're all this form of government where your leadership is appointed. So the bishops appoint you a pastor. The democratic form, you pick one and you vote on him yourself. This other form, it's appointed. Methodism is this way. Methodist pastors are not found and elected by their congregations. They are appointed by a bishop. And the bishop says, Bob, you're in this church for 2 years, and then I'm moving you out. Now, there are exceptions to this rule, but it's appointed. And then there's a Presbyterian form of government. A Presbyterian form of government is kind of in between those two. And Presbyterians have that form of government, where it's run by a group of elders. So it's not appointed, and it's not everybody, but there's a group of men and or women that care for the church. We're that form of government. The elders care for the church. Under the elders is a staff. The staff serve at the good pleasure of the eldership. Okay? Now, how does one become an elder? The process is this way. The elders once a year meet, all the elders, and they'll get a list of men and women that they think are potential elders. They've seen them in ministry. They've seen them at the altar praying with people. They know their reputation. They say, I think this person would be a good elder. I think this person might be good. And you get a whole list of names of potential elders, maybe about 15 names. Then a subcommittee of the elder team will take those 15 names and we'll do interviews and pray and talk, and they'll reduce that 15 down to about 5. Okay? Those 5 names will be given to me. Pastor Dan, we think these 5 people would make good elders. Of those 5, I'm going to pick 3. So I look at these 5 and I go, okay. I pray and I go, I like this person, this person, this person. Now, remember, everybody put them up on the board, and this group has already passed through a vetting process, all 5. But I get to pick 3 of the 5. I pick 3 of the 5. So I think Bob, Sally, and Joe would be good elders. Boom, boom, boom. We take those 3 people, we present them to the church. And we say to the church, We are considering these 3 people for elders. What do you think? And it's a time of discernment. And the church can email, talk to a pastor, write a letter. They can say, I really like Bob. Or I had a bad business dealing with Bob, and I don't think he's a godly man. We receive all the input from the church. And based on that input, we will see if there's a consensus that this man or woman has the support of the church. They already have the support of the elder team. They never got that far. They've already been vetted, which means the spouses have been talked to, criminal backgrounds, doctrinal positions, that they've already been vetted. Now you wait for the confirmation of the church. We've had one elder in the last 5 years that didn't get confirmed by the church. We don't vote. For example, if I say I want Tom here to be an elder, what do you all think? I'm not just going to allow one person to derail Tom. You'd have to be discerning. But if Tom owed Bob over here some money and never paid him back, and this guy says, hey, this guy owes me money, he never paid me back, I'd step back and say, that's an integrity issue. I don't really think you're prepared for an elder. So by giving feedback from the church, it really has a way of kind of seeing the reputation with the community and with the church at large. And if nothing negative comes back, or very little negative comebacks, then the person is presented to the church. We lay hands on them, and they're ordained to an eldership role. And they're ordained for the rest of their life. Because an elder is a spiritual father or a spiritual mother. They only serve on the board, however, for 3 years. Our view is if you get an elder on the board and he's on the board for life, like for 20 years, there's an advantage to that, but there's also a disadvantage because the newer leaders don't have a chance to sit at the highest level of governance to shape the church. So our church is deliberately right now making sure that the eldership reflects multiple ethnicities and not multiple genders, both genders, so that we get an eldership that's reflective of the whole church. Now, there's not a maximum number of elders. You can have 12, you can have 14, probably not less than 10, because every service we have 10 services. And it would be great to have an elder at every service to help the pastor. That's a long answer to a very good question. We're pretty open about who's on the eldership. All of our decisions are open. We have a business meeting coming up here soon. You're all welcome to it. That's not the annual meeting, by the way. That's the business meeting. We look at the budget. There's no secrets. Our salaries are not secret. My salary is not a secret to our members. Matter of fact, I'm really opposed to pastors keeping their financials secret. Hey, if you know what the President of the United States gets paid, I think your congregation should know what you get paid. Pastors don't want their congregation to know sometimes because it's too much. Let's just be honest. They say it's because of privacy. Well, when you're a pastor, that privacy goes out the door. I'm sorry. You are serving at the pleasure of this congregation. They're not serving you. You're serving them. Your livelihood is based on their faithfulness. They have every right to know your salary. Every right. Matter of fact, I think pastors need to be very transparent about marriage, about kids, about purity, about mental health, about physical health. Now, you don't spill it every Sunday, but you need to be transparent. We live in a world where pastors have been so isolated from transparencies that they project a type of Christianity that no one can reach, not even themselves, and eventually breeds guilt and shame or idol worship. It just does.